Hello and welcome to the AMP podcast, episode number 1. Welcome and thanks very much for tuning in. I'm really excited to start this new podcast series. It's the first time I've done a podcast and I really want to do one. I've been wanting to do one for a very long time, primarily because I love listening to podcasts myself. I find them very thought-provoking and I think they help me to change my opinions and formulate my ideas around key topics, and I also like listening to good stories as well. I was really keen to interview some really interesting people, and we got the opportunity throughout the episodes of the AMP podcast to be able to do that. So I'm really excited to share those with you. Today, the first episode is just going to be about introducing what the podcast is, give you a little bit of a flavour of some of the episodes that are coming up, who you can expect to listen to, and what kind of topics are that we talked about. I'll also talk a little bit about AMP as well, what we are, what we do, why we do it, and who we help. And then I'm going to finish off with a little bit of something slightly different. It's a little bit more interactive. I wanted to give you a flavour of what coaching with AMP looks like, and perhaps put into practice some of the things that we talk about in theory all the time, or I talk about in theory all the time. And so I'm going to actually pose some questions to you at the end of the podcast that might help you with your well-being. They're the sort of questions that I ask clients in consultation that allow me to draw out the sort of information that I need to know what's relevant for a client and how I can actually help them. So hopefully I'll give you a flavour of what the coaching journey might look like, at least to begin with. So that's how we're going to go about it today. So let's get into it. First of all, I want to talk about the episodes that are coming up, so what you can expect in the coming weeks. We're going to be releasing the podcast weekly. So what I wanted to do with these interviews was really interview coaches from across the wellbeing spectrum. So there's so many different aspects of wellbeing. There are coaches that represent each different section of that industry, if you like. And so to get the perspectives and the stories and the insight and the coaching information that those coaches possess, and then to be able to bring them, well, first and foremost to me, but also to you guys as listeners as well. So each episode I've invited a coach on, and the principle is that I ask them a simple question. And that is, how do you make people better? So what I was hoping with this is that it gives them the opportunity and the freedom to talk about what they do, who they help, and what their perspectives on wellbeing are, but also to give us the information, the juicy information we want from them as well. So over the course of the series, you'll hear answers to this question and quite a few more as well from nutritionists, psychologists, neurophysiotherapists, personal trainers, and back pain specialists across, so a wide range of different coaches. And I asked these coaches, I started off asking most of them about, I suppose, how they got into coaching in the first place, how they have then, what experiences have allowed them to formulate their approaches, the sort of clients that they work with, how they work with those clients, who can benefit from the sort of work that they do, and then obviously some details around their approach, and also ask them to give some advice to you guys, the listeners, as well, that they find themselves giving out most frequently, or that they think is most pertinent to everybody's well-being. And I was fascinated to hear not just the range, but also the depth of answers that the coaches gave. I felt the information I got in each episode was informative, for sure, but also inspiring as well. And so I hope that you find the conversations as interesting as I did. I know I'm bias in this, so hopefully you find them as interesting as I did. One thing I found speaking to the different coaches, and I was trying to look for a common thread between them, and one of the things I found was that just how amazing all of our brains and bodies are given the right conditions. So regardless of what all these different coaches were actually doing in terms of their practice, whether it was nutrition or exercise, pain relief, whatever it might be, one of the common threads was they were all trying to give clients and patients advice about the right sort of stimulation that their body or the brain needed in order to bring about the outcome that they wanted, help them to achieve their goals, whether that was get pain-free, whether that's to lose weight, whatever those goals were. It was just about being able to provide the body and the brain with the right environment to allow it to do its thing. And that's something that I found was really powerful, because sometimes we think perhaps my body is not quite doing what I want it to do, or my brain's not quite doing what it wanted to, maybe it's not quite good enough, I need to make it better. And that was the one thing that stood out to me after having all of the conversations, was there's actually probably nothing wrong with the system itself, but there needs to be a change in the environment in which it's being stimulated and which it's working in order to get the most out of it. And that's as much as you can do. You can just optimize the environment in which your brain and your body are working and then let it do the rest. And when we do that, they are incredible. So I find that particularly inspiring and an enjoyable reflection to have had on all those conversations. The other thing that really jumped out at me was the value of expertise. Now, we live in a world of speak first, think second, a world of extreme, polarizing views, where emotional reactivity and conflict tend to dominate the media and the demands of our attention. And for me, I found it reassuring and inspiring to listen to passionate people who have spent years developing their crafts purely for the sake of helping people make more positive changes in their lives. And I think we need experts like that. We need people who dedicate hours every week and years of their life to learning the information that's relevant, rather than just saying the first thing that comes into their mind and reacting to what they think and what they feel. And I think it was really, really nice experience to get the opportunity to sit down with those people, because by virtue of the fact that their expertise and they're experts, means that's quite expensive sometimes to get access to these people. But through the medium of the podcast, I was able to speak to them. So I've enjoyed it immensely, and I really hope you do too. So that's what you can expect, or a little flavor of what you can expect coming up. We look at different topics. So I've already mentioned a couple, but weight loss, and specifically the role that nutrition plays in weight loss. A really interesting episode with Dan Price, where we talked about some of the challenges with social eating, perhaps different populations who are unfairly hampered or handicapped perhaps by genetics, by their physiology, and therefore what to do about that, how to circumnavigate those unavoidable differences that might make it more difficult to lose weight. So a really enlightening episode. I spoke to a psychologist around anxiety and what is the difference between psychological coaching, psychotherapy, and perhaps trying to break down some of the barriers that still exist and the stigma that exists around receiving psychological coaching. And we want to try and move the needle and move the dial more towards that being a positive move that people make for their mental health and their mental performance, as opposed to something that stigmatizes them as being broken or incapable. And so that also I found very inspiring, but also educational as well. Some fantastic sound bites and takeaways that make you really think about the way that you think and the way you feel, and what kind of impact that can have on your overall mental health, but also your physical well-being as well. So another fascinating conversation. We talked about nutrition specifically for health. So this was another episode with Dan Price where we're just moving the area of nutrition that we're focusing on. So rather than looking at a way of eating or a way of dieting that can help support weight loss, actually what should you be eating and how should you be viewing food with regards to actually benefiting your health? And then how do you measure that? How do you know if you're being successful? So really, really interesting conversations to come out of that. So if that is your area, then definitely tune in for that episode. A slightly out there episode we recorded with Jacob Hassan, where we looked at hyperbaric treatments. So hyperbaric chamber treatments, whereby you increase atmospheric pressure in the chamber and you also breathing in a higher concentration of oxygen. And what that does to the brain, both for some medical conditions, very varied medical conditions, and how it can help with recovery, and also how it can help with performance as well. That one particularly for me was interesting, just based on that point I've already mentioned about how amazing our bodies and our brains are at being able to fix themselves if you give them the right environment. And that is a story where science has given us the understanding about what the correct environments are to accelerate recovery for people. So another fascinating one, perhaps one for the geeks. We also talked to Gurinder Sandhu about back pain. Now, he's a PT who specializes in back pain. And so he has come across lots of people with pain injuries, both chronic and acute, who have seen a physiotherapist or a chiropractor, an osteopath, and he's then looking after them either post-surgery, post-injury, and trying to rehabilitate them, get them back into exercise, get them back to feeling their confident best. And in that conversation, we explored how back pain is not just purely structural, functional, it's actually looking more holistically at back pain. What's the role that your mindset, stress, and lifestyle are playing in either exacerbating or continuing to keep you in pain? So there's loads and loads to go at. What I wanted to touch on a little bit is specifically what it is we do at AMP, because all of those conversations, we're talking to other coaches. And that got me thinking about what it was that we do at AMP to make people better. And really, the best way I can encapsulate it is kind of at the heart of AMP is our belief that true well-being comes from the synergy between body, mind, and fuel. So what you eat, think, feel, and the way that you move are absolutely fundamental to living a fulfilled life. Longevity, vitality, health, happiness, those are all terms that we think of when we talk about well-being. And that's why we want to help people make meaningful changes in their lives, not purely to get the body to look a certain way, but also so people can look, feel, perform at their best. And that means that we have to take into account more than just one aspect of human well-being. We need to take a holistic view. And an example of that I've come across lots and lots that I'm sure you'll be familiar with is trying to lose weight. And the main barrier to that, not necessarily being what to eat or what not to eat, but it's eating those foods consistently enough to lose the weight that you want to lose to achieve your goal. And that hasn't really got anything to do directly with the nutrition itself. People know more fruit and vegetables, lean proteins, less confectionery, move more. These are general rules that people tend to be aware of. What often makes the difference in terms of weight loss is the behavior change. That's the most difficult bit. And that's got nothing to do with food and nutrition. That is a psychological skill. That's to do with motivation and adherence to a plan. It's linked to what we value and what we want to be, or what we want our identity to be. And what gets in the way and causes us to divert from that diet plan is often things like stress, a fear of failure, dips in motivation, self-doubt. And again, they're all psychological principles. And they need to be in balance with the diet approach for it to be successful and for it to work. So your mindset going into a weight loss diet is absolutely key. And that's where you see a lot of diets do actually fail. It's not necessarily that the approach itself from a nutrition perspective is not correct. People might be trying to eat fewer calories and generally try and keep their activity levels high, which is the correct approach, generally speaking. But without paying attention to some of those aspects of the psychology, it's never going to work. You're never going to be able to continue to make those diet changes for long enough because those other aspects come in and derail your plan. So it's absolutely key that you get the correct balance between these different areas of well-being. And another example is the old maxim of you can't out-train a bad diet. So if you look at it from a training point of view, if you're training to become fitter, stronger, or even lose weight, you know that you need to go to the gym, maybe lift weights, go running, do some cardio. But if you aren't fueling correctly and you're drinking alcohol, not sleeping properly, eating too much sugar, not enough vegetables or protein, and how do you expect your body to be able to make those adaptations to the training that you're expecting it to make? The food we eat contains the materials that our body needs to build new cells, develop existing cells, adapt muscles to become stronger, produce the hormones that control our functions, produce the neurotransmitters that our brains need to signal to our body how to perform. And without those, our bodies simply can't function. So if we over restrict or we simply don't include adequate nutrition, we limit the ceiling of what our bodies can actually do in response to that training we're doing. And it will just feel as hard, if not actually harder, to do the training without properly fueling. And if we want to recover as well as we could, you need to be giving the body, again, that right environment for it to be able to recover in between bouts of exercise. So you're just by getting the nutrition approach wrong, or perhaps not including everything that you should in your diet, you will not achieve the same results from your training despite putting the same amount, if not more, effort in. So there are just so many more of these examples where you need to see, as I said, that synergy between those different pillars of well-being in order to achieve the goals that you're expected to achieve. Those systems that govern our overall sense of well-being, they're all integrated. They're reliant on each other to function optimally. And on an individual level, that can become very complicated in terms of the specifics of each person's diet or each person's exercise routine. As a concept, it's very simple. You have to balance what you do in each of the three fundamental areas in order to achieve a state of optimal health or well-being. So that's what we do essentially at AMP. We have a team of coaches who work together with clients to support them to make changes in the relevant sections to optimize their routine to achieve their goals. And to do that, we take into account them as a person, their goals, their abilities, and their individual preferences. And then we give them the information they need and some simple strategies to help them create the right conditions for their body and their mind to grow and develop in the direction that they're interested in going in. And it's really that simple. But you can see quite clearly how personalization of those plans is absolutely key, because we're all different. We're all motivated by different things, and our bodies will respond slightly differently. No two bodies are exactly the same. So while the principle and the concept is very simple, application to each individual can be very complicated. If the greater number of those different aspects of our well-being that you want to take on and include in the plan, the complexity increases. Because as you change something with your diet, you're also then simultaneously changing some demands cognitively, emotionally. So the integrated part is very, very challenging. And that's where at AMP, our coaches have to work very closely together as a team and communicate very clearly about what it is we're doing with clients trying to achieve and any changes that occur. But from a client point of view, what you end up with is just a very simple set of steps that you can follow, and then some accountability from our coaches to help along the way. And of course, the ability to ask questions as you go, which is very, very useful. So questions just segues on to the final part of this short introduction to the AMP podcast. And these, as I mentioned at the beginning, are questions that I ask clients to get them thinking about their own well-being, and also some questions that I ask to give me the information I need as a coach in order to make really effective decisions around what advice to give, particularly with regards to exercise, but as a team at AMP with well-being generally. So this is the interactive bit. It gets you thinking. So apply these questions to your own situation, and I'll give you a few seconds in between each question just to think it through and just let it sink in. And hopefully you find some interesting thoughts pop up, and maybe it'll make think about things a little bit deeper or in a different way. So if we warm up with the basics, the classic question is, what are your goals? What are you looking to achieve from either your exercise routine, your diet, your mindset, or hopefully all three together? But to take that a little bit further, what are your top three goals? And if you had to put them in order, what would be the priority goal? What would be number 2 and number 3? So this helps you to think more deeply about not just one thing that you want, but what are the conflicting goals here? And are they conflicting, or do they actually work well together? Are they well aligned? Now think about the most important priorities in your life. So these could be work, family, money, success, being liked, having fun, traveling, whatever it might be to you. Just your most important priorities in life. And then do your goals and your priorities align? I think this is a really, really interesting thought process to go through, because sometimes we have these goals that we want to achieve, But unless we think about the types of things that we prioritize, so the type of thing that never loses out when we get busy, it's the one thing that we always do. We always turn up to work. Work always comes first, or family and relationships always comes first, and work comes second. Health and well-being can be surprisingly far down that list. And so what happens is we have a health and well-being based goal, and we start doing that week 1, week 2, however long it might be, and then something big comes up at work. And because that's a priority in our life, the well-being goal is the thing that loses out. And that's where some of the inconsistency can come in, because it takes work to back off again before we can pick up a well-being goal. So it's worth thinking about. Then let's delve a little bit more into your inner motivations, your why, if you like. What will achieving your goals give you? What will it do for you? And then secondly, do they come from something you want or something that you think others expect of you? And this can sometimes be quite difficult to answer straight away, but it's definitely worth considering, because we will initially be very motivated if we think we're being judged by other people. But to sustain that motivation, if we're doing it for the validation from other people, if the validation is not coming in, if we're not being watched by those people, or if we feel we're likely to fail, unless we're doing it for ourselves, that motivation can drop away quite quickly. And particularly in the face of something that we are doing for ourselves. Let's just get deep for one question, and then we'll duck back out and change gears. What do you want your future to look like? Do you want to be healthy? Do you want to be fit, confident, fulfilled? Whatever it might be. And then just consider, if you do nothing different to what you're currently doing, are you already on the path to that? Or do you end up somewhere different? Okay, and then let's just relate that back to those pillars of well-being. So how could you improve your diet to help you achieve those goals? What role should exercise play in achieving your goals? And are you currently managing to do that consistently? Is there anything in your mindset that prevents you from feeling like you're already exactly where you need to be? So I'll say, is there anything in your mindset that prevents you from feeling like you're already where you need to be? Because we have this great sense that we're on this journey, we're going somewhere, and we want to be somewhere that we're not currently. But sometimes good to assess whether there's some blockage in your mindset that will mean that whatever point you reach, you will always be dissatisfied with it. Is there something in the mindset that you currently have towards your health and well-being where it's never enough? Because if it is, it's good to reconsider that when you're thinking about your goals. And then what I like to finish with is, let's look at the positives. So let's flip this around. So there's lots of talk about what we want to achieve and where we're going, but very little, sometimes reflection on what we're already doing that's positive. So when do you feel at your best? And how would you rate your health, fitness, well-being, lifestyle? If you lump them all together, how would you rate it out of 10? And then now consider why you didn't give it a lower score. So if you gave yourself a 7, why wasn't it a 3? If you give yourself a 5, why wasn't it a 2? What are you doing already to accumulate the score you gave yourself? Because those are the things that you can give yourself a pat on the back for. There will be things that you're already doing that we tend not to focus on. We tend to focus on the things we're not doing, perhaps the negatives, and we look for the threats. What's the threat to me achieving or not achieving my goal? And we tend to be a little bit blind to the things that we're already probably doing quite well. Would you be happy if you could make just a couple of changes and see that score go up by 1 or 2 points? And if so, could you make those changes straight away? And how would you feel about yourself if you did get that score to go up within just a couple of weeks? So hopefully those questions have maybe got you thinking about your own well-being. They've got you thinking about the sort of things that you're already enjoying doing. And maybe they start to shrink the size of the task in front of you to improve your well-being. Because more often than not, there are just small tweaks and changes to your routine that will make a big difference and give you a large return on investment for your time and your energy and your motivation. And that was one of the things that I found speaking to all of the coaches. They were striving to try to hone their message so that the information they were delivering to their clients and to their patients enabled them to get where they wanted to be with an economy of effort, the minimum effective dose of input for the maximum back for their time. And I really hope that you listening through this series will get that same sense from the conversations that I had with the coaches as I did. I'm really excited for this series. I hope you are too. Thank you very much for listening. This is a really short episode. The following episodes will be about 45 minutes and we'll be releasing them weekly. So please stay tuned. You can pick up wherever you listen to your podcast. You'll be able to listen to all the episodes. And I look forward to chatting with you soon.